All right, so for this one, I'm going to go over these questions. Um, if there's any that you need to go through, just skip to the ones that you need. All right, but these are the questions I'm going to go through on this, just so you know beforehand. For 1 and 3, I'm not going to actually finish the problem. I'm just going to make sure that we understand what this standard is asking, is that we're rewriting this as an addition problem. So when we see this, I see 67 minus 24. You need to rewrite it as 67 plus, and then that is plus that negative 24. It's just showing you that when we see 67 minus 24, that 24 is a negative number, and we can rewrite it as an addition if that helps us to see this a little bit more. Because as we go to solve, we always ask ourselves, what are the signs? Are they the same or are they different? And if you're unsure that this is actually saying that 24 is negative, rewriting it can help you. But beyond this unit, you won't see me rewrite it like that, because when we learn to solve equations, I think sometimes this can confuse people. So this is just to help you understand adding or subtracting different signs. All right, so same thing when we do number 3. Both of these are negative now. So I'm just going to keep that first one negative, and then I'm going to add that negative number, or rewrite it as an addition of the negative number after. So we can see that both these numbers are in fact negative, and then you would go ahead and combine them. All right, and the reason why this is important, like I said, is because if you're struggling, the first step that we always ask ourselves when we're answering is, are the signs the same or different? And sometimes people see this and think, oh, well, this is, that they don't realize that when we minus that, because they think, oh, that 32 is positive, so they might think, oh, this is minus 25, but then this one's actually, we're subtracting a positive number, so they might get confused with the sign of it. This negative is with that 32, so it's actually a minus 32, which writing it like this can maybe help some people visualize that a little bit more. All right, so this one you don't need to rewrite, you're just adding or subtracting. If it helps you, then by all means do it. But the first question we ask ourselves, are the signs the same or different when we're adding or subtracting? And we see that they're both negative. So when they're the same, all we do is just add. So we can disregard the negative signs, and we can just add 228 plus 375, like the way that we're used to adding. So 8 plus 5 is 13. We carry the 10, so then 2 plus 7 is 9, plus the 10 that we carried before, so that's 10. And then we add 1 plus 2 is 3, so 300 plus 300 is 600. So we know our numerical value is 603, but then don't forget, we have to go back and say, what was the original problem? 2 negative numbers or 2 positive? And if you owe someone $228 and you borrow 375 more, your final answer is that you now owe them 603. Right? So we can disregard the signs to help us when we're adding or subtracting, but we just can't forget about the signs at the end. Right? So then here we go, same thing. Are the signs the same or different? Well, they're different. And when they're different, we're always going to subtract. And then the way that we can manipulate our problem is, rather than doing 71 minus 132, we can take the quote-unquote larger number and subtract a smaller one from it. So this way it's done in a way that we've been doing for a very long time, and then we subtract how we know. 2 minus 1 is 1, 13 minus 7 is 6. So we know our final numerical value is 61, but then this is the same thing. We have to go back to the original problem and say, okay, well, which number was larger? Was the negative number larger, or was the positive number larger? And since the negative number, 132, is quote-unquote bigger than 71, our final answer needs to be negative 61. All right, so by looking at the signs, we can then manipulate and turn the problems into things that we're just used to solving, regular addition and regular subtraction. Because if we try doing 71 minus 132, we can't do the borrowing that we're used to doing. So it's a different method that we would have to do within our head as we're solving that. All right, so this is one that a lot of people said that they needed help with. And when you're doing this, first thing that we're going to do is rewrite this problem. When we are subtracting a negative, as we talked about, when we minus a negative, that's actually because we're thinking we're taking the opposite. When we subtract, we're taking the opposite of that number. So when we subtract that negative, or if I don't have no money, we know that the two negations offset each other, and we actually do have money. Or if we subtract the negative, we're taking the opposite of the negative. This actually turns to a plus. So I'm going to rewrite this as negative 373 plus 228 minus 392 plus 54 plus 87. Right, and as we get into order of operations more, we're going to talk about our PEMDAS, and most of the times you see it written like this. You're actually going to see me when we go over writing it like this. And the reason why I'm writing it like this is multiplying doesn't come before division. It's left to right and left to right. So whatever comes first, as we read our problem left to right is what we do for both multiplying, division, and adding, subtracting. But the thing about adding, subtracting is really it doesn't matter the order. So what we're going to do is I'm going to just highlight my like signs. So all my positives I'm going to highlight in yellow, and all of my negatives I'm going to highlight in positives, or in green, and I'm just going to add those first. So it's going to be 228 plus 54 plus 87. I'm going to focus on those first. So 228 plus 54 plus 87. So I add them. 8 plus 4 is 12, plus 7 is 19. 1 plus 2 is 3, plus 5 is 8, plus 8 is 16, and 1 plus 2 is 3. So when I add all my positives together, I got 369. And now I'm going to go ahead and add or combine my two negatives. And we know when we're adding numbers of the same sign, we just add them. So 373 plus 392. This will give me 5. This will then give me 16. This will then give me 7. So we know when we combine those, and since they're negative to begin with, it's negative 765. So the first thing I did is just combine all of my like signs just to get them into two numbers. And now I know that they're different, so I'm going to go ahead and do my 765 minus 369. So now I'm going to borrow from here. So this gives me 15 minus 9 is 6. Well, I can't do 5 minus 6, so I'll borrow. 15 minus 6, that was 9. And 6 minus 3 is 3. So I know that this is going to give me the number 396. And since the negative number was larger, that means my final answer needed to be negative from here, because if we were thinking about this on the number line, we're starting at 369. And since 765 is more, I know I'm going to continue to go beyond that 0 and into that negative portion of our number line to give me negative 396. All right, so you could just go left to right and add these two together first, get your value, then combine it with negative 392, then combine it with 54 and 87. You could do that, or you could just add all your like signs together to narrow it down to the two values, and then from there do your subtraction at the end. And there's really no preference for it. It's just your own, whatever works for you. All right, so for this one, number 12, same thing, the signs are different, so I know I'm going to subtract, and 32 is bigger than 12, so I'm going to do 32.8 minus 12.35. So remember, when you're just adding or subtracting decimals, you just have to make sure you line them up. And then since there's no number written there, we can always write as many zeros as we need to at the end. So I'm going to put that 0 there, and now I'm going to go ahead and borrow. So now we have 10 minus 5 is 5, 7 minus 3 is 4, 2 minus 2 is 0, and 3 minus 1 is 2. And then, so we know our value is 20.45. Well, we look and say, okay, well, the 32 is actually negative, so the bigger number is negative, so that means my final answer needs to be negative as well. All right, and then for number 14, I'm just going to rewrite it here, so when I go to create our like denominators, I have space to multiply. So remember, when we're adding fractions, we need to make sure that our denominators are the same, because that's how many pieces the whole is broken into. And like I said in class, it doesn't make sense if I'm trading one piece of candy bar for your one piece if mine's broken into bigger pieces. So we need to make sure everything's equal. So we need to say, okay, 10 and 4, what is our least common multiple? And if you ever get stuck, remember, just write out your multiples of your smaller number until you get to one that you know that the bigger number goes into. 20 I know 10 goes into, so 10 goes into 20, and so does 4. So that's my least common denominator. Well, 4 times 5 gives me 20, so I'm multiplying it by 5 over 5, because remember, this is equivalent to 1, so we're not changing the value of it. And I'm going to multiply 10 by 2 over 2, because once again, this is equal to 1, so we're not changing the value, we're just manipulating. Well, 2 times 7 is 14, and 3 times 5 is 15. And now once we get like denominators, we just simply add or subtract the numbers on top. So since it's minus, I know they're different, and 15 minus 14 gives me 1, and since the larger number was negative, I know it's going to be negative 1 over 20. All right, and then number 19. So when we're doing our absolute value, we know that at the end, the absolute value is the distance it is from 0, so this is going to give me a 52 as my answer, and this one's going to give me 98 because it's 98 units away from 0, 52 units away from 0. But when we have numbers inside, we need to simplify first. So we're going to go ahead and combine these. Well, the signs are the same, so we'll add 51 plus 72. This is then going to give me 3 and 123, but since they're both negative, it's negative 123. So you must show me this as your work. And then we take the absolute value. Well, the absolute value of negative 123 is 123. So you must show me this step in order to get full credit. For this one, I'm just going to there's really not work that you don't have to show, but you can do this just for your own benefit. So from here, I know we're starting at negative 52, and we're taking the opposite of it. So when we take the opposite, it's what number is the same distance from 0, so I'm jumping to the opposite side of the number line. So when I do this first one, I'm at positive 52. However, there's still another opposite for me to do, so when I do this opposite again, of now 52, I know it's bringing me back to that negative 52, so the opposite of negative 52 is negative 52. All right, and remember, we could rewrite the words opposite as negative, and we know that two negatives offset each other, so these two are going to cancel each other out, and I'm just left with my negative 52 anyway. All right, so for problem number 24, opposite numbers are which numbers on the opposite side of the number line that's the same distance from 0. So opposite numbers have to be pairs. That means that when we do this, there's only two numbers. The opposite of 5 is negative 5. The opposite of 10 is negative 10. The opposite of negative 12 is 12. It's always a pair of numbers. Yes, when we add our opposite numbers, they always add to 0. So if you were to look at this, you can say, well, 5 plus negative 9 plus 4 does add to 0. So maybe someone might think that these are opposite numbers because when we combine them, it gives us 0. But this answer is no, they're not opposite numbers. Opposite numbers must be pairs. So even though these all add to 0, we can only look at them as 5 and negative 9. Are they opposite? Can 4 and negative 9, are they opposite? Are 5 and 4 opposite? We can't look at three numbers. It's a pair of numbers. So the answer is no. And then your explanation can vary depending on how you're explaining it, but you must at least include that opposite numbers just have to be a pair, and these are three different numbers. For problem 25, you're going to submit something for homework today on Monday. But this is just when you're talking about a real-life scenario of opposite. We just said opposite have to be pairs. And when you're doing your real-life scenario, you just have to keep it from the same perspective. So when Junsi gave his answer before about Dom, he talked about Dom having money and him having money. Well, that's two different people. So just make sure you're talking about it as one person or one scenario. Like if I say that the temperature here in Tokyo rose 3 degrees from when I woke up and it went down 3 degrees at night, that's in reference to Tokyo. I wouldn't say Argentina, the temperature went up in 3 degrees, and USA, the temperature went down 3 degrees, because we're looking at two different things. So as long as if your story is two numbers, that they are opposites, so whatever you're describing, it must be the same as the positive and negative of it, moving up and moving down, and it's from the same perspective. So we said Itsuki gave up 42 points when he was guarding someone, so that would be minus 42, but then he scored 42 points in the game, so that's positive 42. So those two numbers will be opposites. You wouldn't say that Itsuki scored 42 and someone else gave up 42 because we're looking at two different people. All right, so whatever story you come up with must be of the same perspective, and the story must talk about something moving in a positive direction, moving in a negative direction, and offsetting to be 0, so that way we know that they're opposite numbers. All right, that is it for this video.